Well, as promised, we got Mike White here, Georgia basketball coach. Coach, obviously, getting into a busy time right now. Portal opening up. But before we look forward, I want to just take one look back. I mean, when Gonzaga flashed up there, everybody's thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is a program with 16 Sweet 16, or 9 Sweet 16 appearances in a row,
Yeah.
26 straight." I mean, very comfortable in that arena against a Georgia team and making their first appearance in 10 years, and yet I kind of felt like he had a pretty good game plan. I mean, and I'll just recap it, but okay, they lead the nation with 43.1 points in the paint per game. I'm looking down. Georgia outscores them 32-28. Okay, no easy twos, like shutting down the run game in football. Got to keep them off the free throw line. They hit 80%, third best in the country. Well, again, Georgia 21 free throw makes Gonzaga 11. You're feeling pretty good about it. Point guard, this guy's number 2 in the country. He's the NCAA leader in assists. Yeah, he had 8 assists, but he had 5 turnovers. He matched his season high. It's almost like boom, boom, boom in terms of the scout. I mean, you had to feel good about the defense that you had out there in terms of what you wanted to take away.
Yeah, what we wanted to take away. Yeah, Mike, it's funny. It sounds like you were sitting in on our staff meetings as we were prepping for those guys. We did a lot of good things. I know the final score doesn't indicate it. That obviously we got off to a really, really rough start. Had some empty possessions. We had some open looks that just didn't go. Felt pretty good about our looks early. I remember pumping up my fist and our staff doing the same thing to our guys after a couple of those, what we call A shots. They just didn't go.
Right.
And then they hit some contested threes. They did. And, they're better offensively than we are. It wasn't our best night. They deserved, to advance. They've got a heck of a thing going there with Coach Few. Got a lot of respect for their program and what they've accomplished and continue to accomplish. That said, though, I thought our guys did a really good job of locking in, protecting the paint, forcing skips, forcing in those short rolls. We wanted those bigs to fan it as opposed to playing isolations and getting to the rim and drawing fouls. As you said, they're so efficient at converting twos, but also converting from the foul line and force contested threes. And we did. They just made them. They just did. And a lot of times, obviously, good offense always beats good defense.
Yeah, 12 of 20 from 3. I mean, this is a team that was 1 of 15 in their previous game, and I think it was their second most prolific three-point shooting effort in an NCAA tournament under Few. Not that that's any consolation. It happens against your team, and also, no Georgia guys with more than 3 fouls. That was like another big thing because they got so many bigs. I'm like, I'm just going down the checklist. I'm going, hey, look, you guys are 5 of 26 shooting the 3. They're 12 of 20. I mean, it's like some nights you just, and I know you guys worked hard in practice for the moment, but. Look, it is what it is. And as far as Gonzaga, I got to say this. I watched, and I'm sure you probably checked it out too when they play Houston. It looked like an NBA game out there. Everybody's above the rim. And I'm thinking, this just doesn't seem right. How is this an 8 seed? And I'm talking to Mike Mobley about it. He's like, there's only been one other team with a net and a top 10 metric in both Ken Pom and the net ranking. And that team went on to the Final Four as a 2021. So, I don't know who put Gonzaga there or why or what but that was not an 8 team. I'm just telling you, man. That Houston Gonzaga game looked like a Final Four matchup. So, as we move forward,
you know what's funny, Mike?
What's that?
We lose the game. The clock's running out. I walk towards Mark, and you can ask Mark this in time if you see him in passing. And as we're shaking hands, I said, "How the hell were y'all an 8 seed?" And he started laughing. He said, I know we're pretty good, huh? And, that said, though, them playing 2 bigs, I kind of, and them being a big brand name and our guys instantly having that amount of respect for that program when the name pops up on the screen, I kind of like the matchup in that regard, that it would grab our guys' attention. And again, they play big. We struggled at times against defending teams that would really spread you with 4 and 5 out with us playing 2 bigs. That said, though, we also drew a team that was probably better than their seed.
For sure. And that was one of the things, in fact, I remember Bruce Pearl telling me when they survived that 2-point game at Stegman, he said, man, these guys defend the 2 as good as anybody in the league. And again, football analogy, that's like stopping the run.
Yeah.
You just don't want to give up those 2s at the bucket. And Georgia was so good defending the 2. And I know that's not a sexy thing in basketball, but it's such an important thing. It's probably what's going to lead to Houston, making a run, I would project. But I digress. Getting to Georgia basketball, and let's get the elephant out of the room. He was an elephant. Asa Newell, we know he's a one and done. I mean, this guy's projected, I think he's one of 6 SEC guys projected in the first round, all from SEC schools, none Kentucky, by the way. Again, credit Mike Mobley for those stats. He had the best stat guy in the business. But life after Asa, right? I mean, so I feel pretty good. I mean, I know we're in this free agent period of NIL, but
Sure.
you know, I look at Silas Demery Jr. and I hear a lot of we and what we're going to do in June, and I look at Blue Kane, and you know, this is a guy that looks like he's a part of the, you know, part of the landscape now. I mean, he's part of what has happened in the last 2 years. But then what? Like, what happens next for Georgia basketball?
Sure. All of these guys have options, you know, just like all of our staff, you know, year in and year out. And it is the current landscape, and you've got to adapt, and you've got to, as much as you preach loyalty and you want continuity, you know, you want these guys to take advantage of their options every spring and do what's in their best interest. Hopefully that means that we've got a lot of retention, you know, but we'll see. You know, you can't guarantee anything. You go into this thing telling yourself as a staff, as a coach, that, you know, you've got to have plans in place in case this guy may leave, or this guy could jump in the portal and test it and see what his market value is. That said, you know, 1 through 5 positionally, we've got to be prepared, you know, to recruit other guys. You just don't know. I do think that all of our guys had a great life experience this year. Love the University of Georgia, love Athens, love the community, and they were a big part of doing something special. We had a special year. Now, we want to have a more special year next year and the following, right, continuing to build. And we want this to be a launching pad, of course. We don't want to go to the NCAA tournament and come back quickly. We want to get back and be better, right? And so we've got guys that we like that had a really good year, and we were, at the same time, we were very youthful teams. And so Ace has got to make a really tough decision too. I think that he's going to be heavily pursued, as he should be. I absolutely love Asa Newell. If I'm any team in the NBA, I'm doing whatever I've got to do to take a swing at it. And so these other guys with their portal decisions, we'll see. It'll all play out here in the next couple of weeks, the next 3-4 weeks, for sure. At the end of the day, I do think even if you lose a guy or 2 or 3, who knows, I still think we could have as much continuity as just about any team in our league. And I think you've got a league full of senior-laden teams. I mean, there's going to be teams in our league that lose 8 seniors, 6 seniors, 5 seniors. We lose 2 seniors. So at the end of the day, if we have as much continuity, I'm hopeful for, even if you lose a lottery pick / first-round type guy, I like that we can be older. You know, we can be older and have perhaps the most continuity we've had in this rebuild effort here at Georgia.
Well, it's saying a mouthful, and I got to double down when we talk about the special year. You got to talk about the culture. 15 wins in Stegman. That's a program record. I mean, the metrics. 20 of the 33 teams you played were in the NCAA tournament. You played like 18 top. I mean, the schedule was unbelievable. So the fact that you did it amid this record-breaking landscape now, and we saw 14 SEC teams make the tournament, it just crushes the previous record of 11 by the Big East in 2011. You see 7 teams still standing in the Sweet 16, another record for the SEC. But it just means more, right? But they're paying more. These players, this isn't happening for free. We're seeing the as yourself included, the better coaches at the universities. A lot of these players that are transfers, I look at Florida, 4 of their 5 players in the starting lineup started their career somewhere else. I mean, those guys didn't come for free. They didn't come for the sun. Now Georgia, I understand, Georgia's in a more competitive position in this way. And yet still, we dial it back behind those dollars. We talk about the culture. And I think the thing I'm going to remember is at one point you all had lost 9 of 11 games. Now, look a little closer, and 6 of those games were to top 10 teams on the road.
Yep.
Like you said, what does that mean? We're the 11th. We could be the 11th best team, and that be the case. But how do you maintain a culture and a belief where you can finish the season on a 4-game win streak against other bubble teams and Florida right now, which looks like the conference, the tournament favorite? How do you maintain a culture? How do you build a culture seemingly out of thin air with some new blood coming in, new players, freshmen, transfers, and yet here we had this team that was, just showed incredible resolve to make the field?
Sure. I mean, great question, Mike. Culture is action, right? And it's how you carry yourself. It's how you respond to your teammates coaching. It's how you respond to positives, to negatives. It's how you get along, with your teammate, with your staff, with your support staff, your work ethic. It's all action. Um, I think at the end of the day, buy-in is a big piece too, right? And so whatever any of us as coaching staffs are preaching to our team, to our young people, the next step is for your guys, starting with the leadership of that team, whether or not they're going to buy in or not, and hold each other accountable to that. And for us, it was growth. It was simply one day at a time. Let's get better. One practice, one film session, one weight session at a time. Growth, growth, growth. And we're going to continue for that to be our mantra here in this program moving forward. But RJ Godfrey, Asa Newell, Justin Abson, Blue Kane, Silas Demery, Dylan James, the two seniors that came back, Greater Atlanta in Tyron Lawrence and Dakota LaFew decided to finish their careers at Georgia and wear the G. They embraced that growth mantra. They bought into it. They preached it, and they lived it. Again, it was action. And so that focus on simply getting better helped us through the positives and some of the big wins, especially early on where you beat a St. John's and you come home and you got some mid-major teams that you got to prepare for. Let's get better today. Let's get better today. Let's not rest on our laurels. Huge win. Let's celebrate it for a week. It helped in that regard, but it helped more in the regard, like you talked about, Mike, the 4-game losing streaks, just continuing to work and worry about things that we could control. And that's how we practiced our attitude and effort every day.
Yeah, the thought just crossed my mind. You lose to Oklahoma and you say, you know what? That's our worst year. That's our worst loss of the year. They were 43 in the net, right? You take Calipari and Arkansas down to the wire at Arkansas. They're standing here in the Sweet 16 and I play the game. What if Georgia had been the 10 in that bracket? I know that's a dangerous thing to do, but I'm thinking, well, what if that was Georgia that got that watered down Kansas and got to play St. John? But point being is that what the end product that you had, it was significant. It was fabulous. What I want to delve a little bit deeper into, and I can't help but think about it because I got to see you play. I'm old enough to say I was covering the SEC in basketball when you were a player at Ole Miss and a point guard and, dribbling out the clock on the Rebels' first ever NCAA tournament win and taking them to the tournaments. Is the guy that we're seeing coaching now, are you the same guy? Because, the thing I noted, a lot of the coaches I've covered or even seen, these guys are like, they're spitting fire, turn the courtside microphone off, man. You really don't want to hear what they're saying, but you and Mark Few are just like two of those guys that how are they? And I almost, what, number one, is this the Mike White that played point guard for Ole Miss? Is this how he was with his teammates? Was it the same leadership style? And number two, has this whole NIL transfer thing, maybe the nice guys have a little bit of an advantage. They don't hurt quite as many feelings. They don't use exactly the same language. Maybe this is a good thing that we get the Boy Scout. And I say that in a positive way because I think Mark Few, I've seen his practices. He's the same way. I mean, he is one cool cat.
He's a heck of a coach. He's had an amazing run and will continue to do so. I internalize a lot, Mike. I do. I'm as competitive as anyone that I know. I've adapted though too. I have. I was a little bit different coaching those guys at Louisiana Tech. I think that they would tell you that when they see me these days, and probably even earlier on at Florida. But I try to use a little bit more thought and intellect over emotion, as opposed to the way that I responded to positives and negatives at 18 to 22 years old, which was 99% emotion.
So a lot more emotion at Ole Miss as a player. But Mike, the guys tell me that you still jump into drills every now and then. They say Coach will, when he turns his hat around backwards, I guess sometimes you like to make a few shots. He gets a little competitive out there with the players.
I've just had enough time. I've always been a hat wearer, probably because I was forced to wear a uniform in high school, Jesuit high school, with the name tags and the patent leather boots and all of that, and the khaki uniform and the web belt. And if not, you got 45 minutes of penance hall after school. And it was almost rebellious for me. Now I can wear a hat. I'm going to wear a damn hat, even though it's a little bit different because you're in the gym, but also a little bit light averse. You're under the bright lights in the court the whole day. And I've had enough times though where you jump in a drill and you grab a basketball and you go to make a pass or you go to make a shot and you flip your hat by accident. And so yeah, you jump in a drill. Now you turn it backwards and it's out of the way, right? So now you can model what you're trying to teach a little bit better.
So that's when the guys know that it's going to be on. It sounds like a lot of fun ahead. As far as the schedule goes, Mike, when do the guys start? I know they have off-season conditioning at some point. Silas kept talking about June 1st.
Yeah, yeah. June 1st is a date that we talk a lot about, especially late in the year. Guys, we've been at this since June 1st, right? Whatever day that was. I don't know if it was the 4th or the 3rd. Whenever those workouts started, it's early June when that first summer session starts. And that's when we'll be back at it again this summer ahead of us. But that's a date that, we used as a reference point a lot. And we'll do when I figure out what that date is. I need to probably ask today. Because that's when we're back at it, and that's when that next 10-month season ends. It's incredible. You think about college basketball and the average fan, if you were to ask a person on the street, how long is college basketball season? 4 or 5 months. It's 10 months. If you go June 1 to right now, basically you're talking 2 months where you regroup a little bit. And for coaches, it's crazy because we've had the lack of dead periods that now we have. Football had it figured out a long time ago, but I've been doing this for 20-something years now without literally a dead period until this year where you can take 4 or 5 days and you're not allowed to have recruits on campus, nor are you allowed to go on the road and recruit, which is much needed for our sport.
No doubt. When we look at a characteristic, I guess two questions here. One, as you build Georgia in the future, every coach has his staples, right? And I've heard so much about your ball screen defense, but then this year you trot out this 1-3-1 that had Pearl perplexed, and even Florida struggled with at times. I mean, do you have a concept or a framework of what a Mike White team is supposed to look like? One, I suppose that's kind of the I know talent has a lot to do with that, but do you have kind of a concept of what it looks like for Georgia basketball in terms of what your team staples, what you want them to be?
I think it starts with defense and rebounding. And I know that in recruiting, that's not the first thing guys want to hear. I'm just honestly answering your question, Mike. If you go back and look at the metrics from the day I got the head job at Louisiana Tech, we've made that a point of emphasis every day. It starts with those two things, the three major areas of the game: defense, rebounding, and offense, of course. And then you've got the special areas. Those two of the three are easier to control, based on effort, on character, on connectivity, on some toughness, and defense and rebounding travel. They give you a chance, whether you're making shots or not, to be competitive in that game. And then offensively, I'm open to playing different ways. We've played a bunch of different ways over the years. We've played 4-around-1, and we've done some 5-out. We've been extremely ball screen heavy. We've had a couple years. We were shorthanded one year, maybe year 3 at Florida, where we were down to 6 or 7 guys at the end of the year, and we were playing late clock, set-oriented offense. You recruit the best you can. We want to have high-character guys that are selfless to a certain extent, that are good teammates. We're going to have a healthy locker room, and then you figure it out offensively. You do. I wish it would be a luxury to know we've got our entire team returning and you know exactly what you're going to do offensively. Right. But at the end of the day, that it's just not realistic. We're going to get the best players that we can get this spring to add to who's going to return. And then we've just got to figure it out. And whether that means we play incredibly fast or somewhat fast or in the middle, we're set heavy, we're ball screen heavy, we're screens off the ball heavy. We're willing to go through a trial and error process and experiment a little bit in the fall and figure out what's best for us. We morphed a few times this year and then figured it out there as we made our run again in playing the best basketball of the season. For us, late in the season, we kind of figured out 2 or 3 different things that were giving us success, and we rode those things late. And I think our guards, certainly starting with Silas Demery, really benefited down the stretch.
Yeah, I think he averaged like 19 points in the last 5 or 6, something ridiculous like that. He was off the hook. Mike, I know that it's probably still a little bit in the moment. I mean, your plane didn't land that long ago. I mean, we were out in Wichita just a few days ago, it seems like. But when you reflect on the season, right, and I know that you got a whole off season to reflect, not that coaches spend much time in the rearview mirror, but at this moment, what stands out about this season? I mean, obviously getting to the NCAA tournament for the first time in 10 years. I mean, the program record wins at Stegman Coliseum, beating 3 conference tourney champs in Florida, Grand Canyon, St. John's. I mean, there's just there. I could go down the bullet point list. There seems so many of them, but what stands out? What's carrying you in your mind right now about this team? I know how much you loved them.
Yeah, special group. Mike, I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you that I still had a bad taste in my mouth and that I was still a little bit down about the way we played and the way it finished. Just being honest. And you're sitting here and sometimes when you're watching these games on TV as a coach and you've been knocked out, it's a little bit easier to watch, at least that you were part of it. You know,
right.
When you're not a part of the NCAA tournament, it's really hard to watch, but you still watch it for educational purposes. But sometimes you're watching and you just get a little bit angry, like, damn, I wish we would have made this shot or forced this guy to bounce at one time and not gotten off to the start we got off to. We would have had maybe we'd still be playing, and what could we do against this team? But then, you know, I've got to tell myself, like you tell your team, perspective, right? Let's look back and look at, if you asked me last June, if you could accomplish what you accomplished, would you feel good about the step that you've made and the step that the program has made? Absolutely. Are you kidding me? All the things these guys accomplished, we broke a bunch of records. We ended a lot of streaks. We started some streaks. But most importantly, we talked about the culture that was instilled this year and that was acted upon by these young guys and the amount of adversity, how resilient that these guys overcame, and how resilient that they were to finish as strong as we did is about as rewarding a late season run as I've been a part of as a head coach. I'll always look back on this group and remember that we lost 9 of 11, but in June, perhaps June 1, who knows, we literally started at that point talking about how difficult our schedule was going to be. And guys, you have no idea, like, there's a chance we lose. I promise you, there's a chance we lose 3 or 4 in a row at some point during the season. And a couple guys look at you like, Coach, you shouldn't be saying that. No, that's potentially that could happen. It could happen to maybe every team in our league, how good our league is this year. It happened to most teams in our league, right?
Auburn.
Maybe
Auburn was 3 out of 4,
right?
I think. Yeah,
right. So
one team in the country.
So how do you have a strong enough culture where you can overcome that? And we can talk honestly about each other and give each other hard truths and focus on getting better and the bigger picture and all of those things. And these guys bought into it, and we can always reference this team moving forward. Really proud of this group. Loved coaching these guys.
Well, and in fairness, when you reach the top 25 for the first time in, 12, 13 years, you were saying the same thing. Hey, don't get too high. Can't get too high. Can't get too low. So, I mean, you guys rolled in the top. I think you beat a top 5 team for the first time since 03. I mean, there were a lot of opportunities where this team could have hit complacency had they gotten complacent after a win over Florida. Right. Or had they read their own headlines in January when you guys broke into the top 25 for the first time in 12 years and beat Kentucky, another one of those teams, Stan, sorry, not to make you mad, because I know you're looking, we beat that team. We beat that team. We beat that team. Yes, you did. You beat some great teams, but I thought you captured it well, Mike. And I'll say it. I mean, you guys changed the narrative. And, to me, that's what you were hired to do 3 years ago. And that's some heavy lifting, man. I mean, let's face it. Georgia basketball tradition going back 118 years. But, like you told us then, hey, this is now. That doesn't matter. This is your guys now, and you put the ball in their hands. And here we are. So I guess I would just congratulate you, and I hope I get to visit with you a little bit more. You obviously have a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of SEC basketball teams left in it, and I'd love to pick your brain a little later. But we really appreciate you joining us on DawgNation. I know the Georgia fan base, they got to be a part of March Madness. I was excited in full admission, I was excited about the NIT run. I'm like, oh, that's Xavier. They've never lost in the first round. Oh, he's going to Wake Forest. He's playing Steve Forbes. They've only lost 1 all year. Oh, they're going to Ohio State. They're going to pack it out. They're still pissed off about the Peach Bowl. I mean, to me, that was like, hey, that's something. Like, I saw something there. And those guys carried it over. And, man, just a great job. So congratulations. And, again, I really enjoyed it
so much, Mike. Yeah.
All right. Well, I know you got to get at it. It'd be interesting what this roster looks like in 3 or 4 months. Hopefully you keep all the guys you want to keep.
Back on the phone.
You got it. Appreciate it. Mike White, back to you, Kaylee.